this morning. This old house used to be my home. Lived here with my wife, family, 4 years now gone. Hard times came and took away. That old government man had to say. First time I recall, would pass the time.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming. This is a wonderful crowd. So good to see so many familiar faces and old friends, and it's been a long time since I've seen a lot of my dad's friends from those old days, but it's wonderful to see everybody, and those of you who journeyed from a long distance, thank you so much for making the trip. It's really great to see so many faces. I moved to Arizona when I was fresh out of high school almost 25 years ago. And despite living somewhere for so long, this is always going to be home to me. I could live there forever, and this will always be home. And I left primarily because it's just way too cold here. My dad used to say about the difference in the heat versus the cold, you can always put more clothes on, you can only take so many clothes off. But I would always say, but you don't have to shovel sunshine or scrape it off your windshield. So I'm happy being in Arizona, and I'm probably going to be there for a while longer. When I was about 19, my dad introduced me to a musical artist that would become a connection that he and I shared for many years. My friend Sadie and I made a trip up to Las Vegas when I was about 19 to meet Dad and some of his friends for my first Jimmy Buffett concert. When I think back, it was probably the first time that my dad and I shared something together. You know, he was always at all my events and things like that, but that was our thing that we had together. And what made that trip so fun was it was probably the first time I remember hanging out with my dad and having a good time with him and his friends. I think, it's really interesting how your relationship with your parents changes once you become an adult. It's a little different than when you're a kid and they're bossing you around. It's a lot more fun when you're an adult. And my kids will probably learn that someday, hopefully. My dad always had a lot of friends around, and as we can see, that's still true. If there was one thing he was good at, it was making friends. I was too young to remember to be at many of the parties held at our farm over the years, but the giant bins full of photographs that we're all going through now tell me that those parties happened, and a lot of good times were had. There were the ice skating parties on Cow Creek, I should say, in the winter, and garage parties around fall hunting season. And then, of course, all the parties on the farm in the summer. And my dad always had extra friends during hunting season, since his farm has some of the best hunting around. Dad brought Jimmy Buffett to our garage one year as well, when my very talented Uncle David Ness painted our garage to look like a colorful tropical beach getaway. The ceiling looked like a beautiful blue sky, palm trees and parrots painted on the wall, and even a cabana. He even transported the heating pipe to look like a 3D palm tree. One only needed to step outside of the frigid cold and be transported to a party on the beach. Many more garage parties were had, and the photos of that North Dakota tropical beach getaway remind me of the good times every time I see it. So that first Jimmy Buffett concert would not be my last, and not my last with my dad either. A few years later, we went to one in Minneapolis. And I was living in Fargo at the time. I did leave Arizona for a little while and spent a couple years in Fargo. And I remember my dad staying up late into the night decorating a straw hat that I'm wearing here in this photo with the beads and the parrots hanging off of it. And he was up so late that night just getting that hat just perfect for me. Now, a Buffett concert in Minneapolis in the winter is not quite like a Buffett concert in Vegas in the nicer time of the year, but we still had a great time. To date, I've gone to 9 Jimmy Buffett concerts, thanks to my dad getting me introduced to that. And I've gone with a variety of different people, my mom, Jason and Janae, a couple more with my friend Sadie, and of course with my husband. We've been to a few together. And we went to one when I was 7 months pregnant with my now 16-year-old son, Tyler. And we even went to one when Tyler was almost 3 and my baby girl was 16 days old. So I'm fairly confident she was the youngest parrot head in the crowd. The other thing that I'll always think about when remembering my dad is how much he loved his farm. And I think if you're a farmer, and many of you probably can relate, it becomes more of who you are than what you do. It's a job unlike any other, and honestly, I'm not quite sure why anybody wants to do it. And I applaud my brother for following in our dad's footsteps and taking over the hard, unpredictable, stressful life of a farmer. And my dad was so proud of his farm, and all the new friends he met over the years were very likely to hear stories of this special place. I know a lot of his new friends he made in Arizona told me that they loved hearing about his stories from the farm. And home to me will always be the farm, the place where I have the strongest memories of my dad. When I asked my kids about memories of Grandpa John, many of them come from times on the farm, and that's the way he would have wanted it. I know my dad always looked forward to our summer visits home, which is really kind of the only time we came home over the years, and when he could share a little bit of this farm life with his city-living grandkids. One summer, he did a bunch of work on the creek to make a little beach area, because a creek would get overrun with the weeds, and wasn't always the swimming hole we would imagine it to be, but the one summer he made a great little beach with a swimming area for the kids, and we had a bonfire that year. And then, of course, he would buy a ton of fireworks every year, because it's just not something we do in Arizona very much. Not a great idea when you live in the desert. There was a year where we actually, there was a big giant dirt pile up at the farm, and my kids had dug a deep hole in this, kids like to dig holes. They dug this big hole in the big pile of dirt. And one night we were leaving the farm, and there was all this leftover, big bucket of fireworks that were left over, and we were going to be leaving, so we needed to light them off. So instead of lighting them off the old-fashioned way, Dad just dumped all those fireworks in that hole that the kids had dug and lit it, and it was very exciting. It went on forever, and then pull back a little bit, and you'll see that it was right next to a propane tank. So not one of our better ideas, but no harm done, and it made for a fun story. So the theme of making friends was definitely something that followed my dad through his life. In the last few years, he found a new community of friends in Mesa, where he looked forward to the season where they all returned from wherever else they went in the warmer or the nicer months of the year, and returned to the lifetime of the retired life of nightly live bands, happy hours, block parties, and other adventures. He took trips to Mexico with these friends. They went to music festivals and lived that retired life to its fullest. He even occasionally had time to visit me once in a while. He was usually pretty busy with his friends. I'd sometimes have to ask days ahead of time for him to get together with us because he just had too many plans. These past few months were really tough. I know he hated missing out on all the fun with his friends there at the park. For any of you who don't know, it was 5 weeks from the day he was diagnosed with cancer to when he passed away. So it happened really quick. He'd always had these chronic headaches, and all of the suffering he experienced, we kind of chalked it up to these headaches. And the doctors, couldn't really figure out what was causing them, and then of course we found out that it was the cancer that was taking over his body. From there, it all went really quickly, like I said, and none of us really had much time to process sort of what was happening and what came next. But we were and continue to be grateful for the love and support of so many family and friends, both here and there and all over. One is never prepared, of course, for the death of a parent, but I'm glad I was able to be there with him during those last difficult weeks. And I'm going to one last Jimmy Buffett concert in October at the place where it all started in Las Vegas. I will toast my dad with a margarita and my straw hat, Hawaiian shirt, and singing some of those beach songs badly at the top of my lungs. Feel free to join me October 15th in Las Vegas. In the song He Went to Paris, Jimmy Buffett sang, "Some of it's magic, some of it's tragic, but I had a good life all the way." I hope we'll all take a moment or two to think about some fun memories of my dad. That'll put a smile on your face, remember some of the good times. Start thinking about some stories you might want to share in a few minutes after Tim sings another song for us. Remember the good times, and he'll definitely be missed by so many. And again, thank you all for being here today and celebrating with us.
The old tree just grows stronger, and older, grow wilder every day. And old Pete just grow lonesome, waiting for someone to say hello there. Hello.
I always noticed he just made everybody feel comfortable. And, you know, I remember the parties, the Hellers, the Smiths, the Haggies, we all used to meet out there on Friday night. You'd get on the phone and you'd come out, are we all going out to Burgers tonight? That's about what we would do for entertainment. This was before we all had kids, of course. But and then one of the other things that I have always noticed about Jon is how good he was with the little kids. He would, talk to them, bend over and talk to them and ask them questions. And he would show them how to do, if he had some little gadget or something. I just remember he was so good with young kids. And then the last thing I always think of Jon is he could dance. My sisters and I married men that don't really care to dance. So whenever there was a wedding or something, Jon had to dance all night long. Between him and my dad, that's who we danced with. But anyway, those are just three of the things I think of when I think of Jon.
I was just going to say my favorite parties were in the garage, but that's all I can say.
Scratching at the door, Lord, I hear the lonesome wind blowing. Tell me, baby, why you come so long? You can picture happy gatherings round the fireside long ago. And you'll never think of parting. Will that leave you held below? Will the circle be unbroken by and by, by and by? There's a better all the way in the sky.
Music was always a big theme for him as well. So it's great to have the wonderful tunes here at this celebration. So on behalf of our family, I want to thank you again all for coming. Please stick around. There's still some food left, and I'm sure lots of stories to share. So thank you again, and we appreciate the support and the love.
When you're down and troubled and you need a helping hand, and nothing is going right. Close your eyes and think of me, and soon I will be there to brighten up even your darkest night. You just call out my name I'll come running, oh yeah, baby, to see you again. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, now all you got to do is call, and I'll be there, yeah, yeah, yeah. You've got